And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
All right, we're live.
Good morning. We're live, 8:05. And for me, 5:05. I'm on 2 hours sleep, but you know what? We got to do this. Good morning, Jesse James, Imp Franco, Hassan Shab. Good morning, guys. Listen, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for listening to us. Thanks for being a friend to the podcast. Imp FRCO, I think that's what it is. He said, morning all. Let's get rocking, Eric and John. We're ready to rock. We got a good one for you. Federal prosecutors want D.C. police officers serve 18 years in prison for vehicle pursuit death. This is extremely important. We talk about this. Good morning, Chris Arnold. This relates to exactly what we've been talking about, supporting the rank and file, including the khaki pants of the NYPD, who's used vehicle pursuits as a tactic to fight crime in New York City under the leadership of John Schell, which John and I both have been expressive to say this is a failed tactic. It's a tactic that has never been utilized as a tactic to stop crime. There's other ways to skin a cat because, unfortunately, the burden is on you, the police officer. And ultimately, chasing is not a good idea unless in very, very rare circumstances. John, what do you think, brother?
Yeah, dude. I think the initial attacks that we started getting on this podcast were after we did a podcast about vehicle pursuits, and we said it wasn't a bad idea. And I think a lot of what we said at that time got quoted in the newspapers, where we said that, it's just not a tactic we used, even under broken windows, even when we did proactive police work, intrusive police work. It was a frowned upon tactic, just being the demographics in New York City, the geographical location in New York City, the density. I mean, it's basically written into NYPD policy. You will never pursue. If you read that policy, it's telling you only in extreme circumstances will you pursue kidnappings, murder, things of this nature, someone actively shooting at you. And it says once the risk to the public outweighs the crime, you're gonna stop pursuit. And that basically is for the majority of crimes, and only in crazy, extreme circumstances. And what we're seeing is under John Schell's leadership, the chief of patrol, is that vehicle pursuits almost initially went up 500% in his first year that he was assigned into that role. But you're seeing vehicle pursuits for things that we never saw in the past. You're seeing vehicle pursuits for unregistered vehicles. You're seeing vehicle pursuits for, basic traffic infractions where people aren't being pulled over. Now, I mean, people that are across the country are going to sit there and say, well, they're the cops. They got to get people. I get it. But when you're in a dense city like New York City, and there's children crossing the street, and there's elderly and the disabled, and the streets are packed, and basically people just cross the street when the lights not even, the lights are still green and people crossing the street. It's just not a good tactic, and it never was. It was always heavily frowned upon. And especially with the technology that we have now, there's absolutely no need to pursue someone unless in this extreme crime.
Chris Arnold says, not for Shell's Angels. That's hilarious, by the way. Booster Malacca 1. I think I remember that very well. Listen to that tape. I remember that captain calling off a pursuit and the sergeant screaming, "Captain, he's effing shooting at us." I'm pretty sure, if I'm right, Booster Malacca, I'm pretty sure that was a shooting in the 7-2 that crossed over into other Brooklyn South precincts. That's something
like 6'8", 6'2".
Yeah, that crossed over several precincts. That's a case I think that most people know about. Active retired guys, especially veterans of the police department, which are gone now. But that was a real interesting case. But just think how long ago that was. I think that might have been the late 90s.
That was one of the pursuits that I would actually.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
but I think that, what that shows is how far things are on the other side, right? How far we've gotten with John Schell's leadership, that's a tactic to utilize these vehicle pursuits. But I'm pretty sure that case was the late 90s, and how it was frowned upon back then to not pursue, to the point that the captains were calling off everything. And that was one of those cases where that's the rare exception. They're actively putting the cops in imminent death, danger of imminent death for civilians. So at that point, the overriding, the totality of circumstances gives the police the allotment to make that to continue that vehicle pursuit, to make that apprehension, because they're actively shooting. So that's one of those rare exceptions. So here's the problem. This various articles that come out about this police officer who is now sentenced. He's facing 18 years in jail for vehicle pursuit. What's interesting about the article, especially the Washington Post, if you read it, if you have a chance to take a look at it, the policy of DC Metro is being weaponized to this police officer, cross-referenced into law. So that's how they're using the weight of policy to have this police officer convicted. So that's why John and I had sent the message out to the khaki pants and general population of the police department that it's not a tactic that you want to utilize, because it's going to be weaponized against you. And in almost every case, some rare exceptions, should you engage in that pursuit, because other than that, what the law and policy tell you is not to do it, because the overriding responsibility is on you. And if something happens to the actual operator who's engaged, who initiates that pursuit, I say they initiate it, or someone else, a bystander, is injured or there's a fatality, the burden is on you. The justice system looks at the burden on the police officer, that you continue that you should know better. And unfortunately, the policies of your police department, your local police department, and if you're NYPD or listen to this, the policy of the NYPD will be weaponized against you, and you can find yourself facing the arm of the law.
100% policy. I mean, you know, before the diaphragm law was in effect, you saw during Panaleo, when they were trying to prosecute Panaleo, they were using the no chokehold to try to prosecute Panaleo. That wasn't law. That just recently became law, but they were using that policy to try to hang Panaleo and say he committed a crime when it was just NYPD policy. And that's why the NYPD policy is so important. So when we started speaking out about the vehicle pursuit, saying, you know, it's just not a good tactic. You're going to see a lot of young guys lose careers. You're going to see people, innocent people, lose their lives on New York City streets to try to get a crime that may be a minor crime that's not even going to get prosecuted in a court of law. So it's like, it's almost, why are we doing this? Why are we putting a young man and a woman's life and career on the line? And then this heavy risk to the life of the public, when absolutely nothing's going to happen to the person that we get. So we kept putting the policy out there. And then what happened? John Shell went on the media. He started doing his media tour, and it's not happening no more. You ain't running on the police no more. And all the retired guys, yeah, we got a chief now. We got a chief with balls. We got a chief with balls. And I said, yeah, the minute they run somebody over, they're going to jail, and that chief ain't gonna have no balls. No, you're not gonna see him. Either he's going to be headed to 233 Broadway, and you're never going to see him again, or he's just ignore it. And then immediately after that, what happened? Chief of Department Jeffrey Mandry, he puts down a statement. What's his statement? Same statement that we put out. Here's the policy. You will follow the policy at all times. Why do you do that? Because they know it's going to go bad. It's not if it's going to go bad. It's when it goes bad. And they know that. And when it goes bad, what are they going to do? I told them to follow the policy. And that's exactly what's happening here with this DC police officer. The people that are going to get in trouble for this, by the way, they're not the zero cops. They're not. They're not the guys that aren't going to do nothing. They're not the guys that don't care about the community. The people that are going to get in trouble and lose their livelihood, lose their career, their financial ability to provide for their family, and then their freedom, the guys that are going to get hurt by this the most are the people that actually care about the community the most, because they're the ones that, regardless that these prosecutors aren't going to move forward to prosecute the individual that they're chasing, they're still risking it all to try to provide public safety. But unfortunately, what they're not realizing is the only person of risk of suffering any consequence is you. You as the police officer, you're the only one in these blue cities that has any chance of going to jail, not the person you're pursuing.
Hey, good morning. Hey, John O. John O's on fire. He's got some great comments here. Early 1990s on that pursuit. So that's interesting, right? We talked about that pursuit in the 7-2 that crossed over the several precincts in Brooklyn South. So anybody here from New York City is familiar with that. But anyone from outside watching this podcast right now, if we have anyone outside New York City, other parts of the country, Brooklyn side is extremely dense. I mean, these actual precincts that we're talking about. But what's interesting about this is the early 90s. I mean, John O says that was the early 90s in comparison to now. The world has changed completely, right? That's even before 9/11. The world has changed before 9/11 and post-11. And even then, it was frowned upon. It was not attacked. It was utilized because the overwhelming majority of these cases, the totality of circumstances, would not be worth it because, unfortunately, the reality would be, unfortunately, we'd probably face a fatality to an innocent bystander, especially working in Metropolis, especially the Brooklyn South. John O. also says, he's right. They told us to put your pay stub on the steering wheel. If you want to pursue, you can lose it all. And guess what, John O.? You're right, brother. But now it's even further than that. Not only will you lose your pay stub, but you'll lose your life. And you're facing the arm of justice. The law is not applying to that perpetrator that initiated that chase, and some innocent 5-year-old kid, God forbid, is mowed down by the car or the police car. It's the burden on you, the police officer, the one going to jail. I mean, look at this title. Fed prosecutors want 18 years in prison for DC officer convicted in pursuit-related death. And that's what's interesting what John said. John, you're absolutely right, brother. You nailed it. You nailed it. It's the police officers with their hearts in the right place that want to do the job, that get themselves and will get themselves into this pickle and lose their life because they want to help. They want to apprehend that pursuing perpetrator, not because they're reckless and want to hurt people. Now, when we talk about the khaki pants, unfortunately, they are reckless, and they're reckless because of the leadership. The leadership has condoned this. The leadership has enabled this. John Schell said it publicly on the news, and he said, no more will people evade the police. And when you say that and your young, energetic police officers hear that, well, they're going out at the beat of your drum. That's what's going on here. Good morning, Ron Layson, Johnny Angel 67. Thanks, guys, for being with us. Friends of the podcast, we really appreciate it.
So let's get into the article. Washington, D.C. Federal prosecutors are arguing for a 13-year veteran of the D.C. Metro Police, Terrence Sutton, convicted of second-degree murder and obstruction in the death of a pursuit suspect to serve an 18-year prison sentence. Sutton's patrol vehicle was not involved in the collision of the suspect who fled from the police on a moped, but he was still convicted in the suspect's death. Before I even go further, we'll get into what the obstruction is, but second-degree murder. Eric, what do you think about that?
That should be alarming to everyone. Our listeners right now, spread the word to the police officers. If they're not aware of this case, any police officer in this country right now, especially New York City metropolis or LA metropolis, where there's extreme amount of density, where the probability is someone could get hurt involved, let them know second-degree murder. That means intentional murder. They're saying that this police officer had the intent to actually kill someone that day. That's crazy to me. That's scary. That's scary that they're utilizing, weaponizing the policy to say that this police officer intended to kill someone. Scary.
Absolutely. Ron Layson says police work is not personal. Cops have to stop taking it personal. That car is running on them. I agree wholeheartedly. You know, get the tunnel vision out, you know, think about it in the long term. And murder, second-degree murder, the police vehicle didn't even touch the other vehicle. They never came in contact. So the suspect's own actions actually led to his demise, but the officers are being charged with murder. Well, the one officer driving the vehicle is being charged with murder. The officers engaged, as reported by WUSA, Sutton 40 was convicted in 2022 in a pursuit-related death of a 20-year-old Karan Heitland Brown, who perished while fleeing from officers on a moped. The outlet described that Sutton is his commanding officer. Sutton and his commanding officer, D.C. Police Lieutenant Andrew Zabosky, 56, engaged in the pursuit of Heitland Brown when he was observed riding a moped down pedestrian sidewalks. The officers engaged in a pursuit that lasted approximately 3 minutes and spanned 10 city blocks down one-way streets the wrong way and at times double the speed limit. The chase ended in tragedy when Heitland Brown emerged from an alley and was struck by an oncoming vehicle. The suspect was transported to an area hospital where he died 2 days later. Even though Sutton's vehicle was not the vehicle that struck and ultimately killed Hyton Brown, the officer was charged and convicted by a D.C. jury of second-degree murder and conspiracy to obstruct and obstruction of justice in 2022. His supervisor, Zavosky, with him at the time of the incident, was also convicted of conspiracy to obstruct for allegedly attempting to cover up the accident details. Sutton's conviction represents a first in department history. Eric, what do you think about that?
Well, this small paragraph here has several layers to peel back. So the first thing I'll say is this: no longer, and I've told my police officers this many times, but especially now, no longer can a police officer say, well, that wasn't a pursuit. We didn't chase them. We just followed them. We're crossing hairs here. John and I just spoke about it literally 30 seconds before we rolled live here on this podcast today. This episode, we said, you know what? It doesn't matter. Your presence, your presence of just being there, and the person takes off. And if you make a single movement in the eyes of the law, that's a pursuit. So that's the bottom line: is do not engage in these pursuits. We cannot cross hands and say, oh, we'll follow them. It's a pursuit. You know, how long the pursuit is, it doesn't matter. The fact is, it's almost like you're pressing a button. You press that button and that person takes off. Think about it. Think about what they're saying. Here's the other layer, right? Think about what they're saying. They're saying that if you pursue that perpetrator, even though you don't know what's in their mind, you have no idea where they're headed, what they're thinking, how far they're willing to go. But yet the police officer is responsible that you're intending to kill them because you're chasing them. So what are they telling you? Hands off, back away, let him go. They're saying if you don't let him go, that you actually want to kill him. That's what they're saying. Let's be honest, John. They're saying that if you don't let him go, you don't want to apprehend him. You want to kill him. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, 100% right. That's exactly what it is. Because he pursued him, and this kid didn't want to stop. It was okay for him to flee. That's what DC is telling us here, right? And that's what New York consistently tells us. It's perfectly fine to evade the police. But if you pursue, and this is why these woke police departments have put this policy into place and refuse to remove it, because that's what I said initially. I said, all right, if John Schell is the chief with big balls, and he's telling all you guys to go chase people, then he should be the same one advocating to remove that policy. He should be saying, let's remove the policy, because the policy in place will be used to send you to jail. It will be used to charge you with murder, as we see in this case. So because these officers, and I'll get further into the article. This is the first I'm reading the article, but we're just going to say right here and right now, the guy's driving a moped. Is that related to any crimes that we're familiar with in New York City? How about robberies from moped, purse snatches from moped? A lot of things going on from mopeds today. So sounds like they're doing some proactive police work with the community would want, right? Because I hear John Schell talking a lot about the mopeds. I heard they solved it when he was with Dr. Phil, but they actually didn't. They actually didn't solve the crime from moped problem, the robberies stemming from moped. It's actually rampant across New York City. So what they're telling you is if that person on the moped that was more than likely going to rob people at gunpoint, more than likely has an illegal firearm on them, decides to flee from you and you chase them and they don't know how to operate the moped and die, you're responsible. You're going to jail for murder. That's what they just told every New York City police officer. That's what they just told every police officer in every woke police department across this country.
Hey, good morning, EC. Haven't seen you in a while, brother. Thanks for being on here. Good morning. Glad to have you listen with us. If you got any comments on this, we appreciate it. You know, the experience from our active and retired police officers that are on this podcast right now. You know, your thoughts and opinions are great. We really could show, especially the retired guys, we could show that it was never a tactic utilized, especially in the early 90s compared to now. And just think how different things are. And yet back then it was a fearful thing. It was a tactic that we shied away from because of the liability, the responsibility on the police officer, and how far we've come. And now we're talking about your financial liability. We're talking about your life. Your life is on the line. Even though your heart's in the right place, your life is on the line. So this is scary. Sherry Elbow put that's pretty funny. What? No more OJ chases? But yeah, listen, it's something we can't be involved in. But we do have We do have a pursuit that ended in fatality, that John Shell did not speak publicly and did not defend that police officer. That was a sergeant who utilized his resources in and around him, and he threw a scooter to try to stop a fleeing perpetrator, and that perpetrator met his unfortunate demise. And we never heard John Shell speak up publicly. Doesn't matter if it was a foot pursuit or vehicle, it was a pursuit. We had a fleeing perpetrator. We had a sergeant pursue that perpetrator. I believe it was from narcotics. And he's on trial for his life right now. We haven't heard much about it lately, but what are your thoughts on that, John? Because we haven't heard a word from John Shell. And that was kind of shortly after John Shell went publicly and said, no longer will people evade from the police and take off. We're not having it.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what we said would happen right from the get-go, and that's exactly what happened, right? That's exactly what happened. You're not going to see him. Like I said, he's either going to be down at 233 Broadway, or he's going to completely ignore that it happened, and you're never going to hear a damn thing from either him or your supposed unions, who till today still refuse to endorse the only candidate that supports law enforcement for president, which is Donald Trump. So if that doesn't tell you they're not working for you and they're working for the New York Democratic Party, you're out of your mind at this point. Let's finish up this article because we got a lot to get into in New York today. A lot transpired over the 2 days, and a lot, just a lot of crazy stuff. Let's finish this up. The outlet reported that the prosecution sought the charges on grounds that the officers violated the city policy on pursuit of suspects, which forbids pursuits for minor traffic offenses, and further that they conspired to cover it up. Prosecutors argued that Hilton's Brown death was murder because of Sutton's alleged conscious disregard of extreme danger or death for serious bodily injury. A sentencing memo released Wednesday by prosecutors Elizabeth Aioli and Risa Burkauer reduced Sutton's decision to pursue the suspect to a mere hunch, claiming that the minor traffic incident flew in the face of the badge the defendant wore. They subsequently requested an 18-month sentence with a 12 to 24-year range allowed under the guidelines. The prosecutors also recommended a 10-year sentence for Sabaski. Insane.
Yeah, it's insane how the arm of the law will turn into police officers. Here, the police officers in D.C. are engaged into the pursuit. John's going to go further into the article, but what's interesting about, and I'll just give you a broad view.
That article's over. That's it.
Oh, that's it. Okay,
yeah.
So the comparison, the Washington Post has a more in-depth article because the Washington Post goes in to tell you the background of the operator on this moped. So just to give you a little background of it, since this article is over, the operator of this moped is part of a gang called KDY in D.C. that's responsible, similar to what's going on in New York, responsible for robbery patterns that they're having on mopeds. So this is twofold here. The argument by the defense for this police officer and also his commanding officer, they engaged this perpetrator under the broken windows, intrusive police work for a traffic infraction, but this operator was part of a larger gang problem, and they had reasonable suspicion that they had committed crime, part of this gang problem, but that didn't matter, and it didn't hold any weight. The bottom line that was presented was that he pursued, and Sutton, the police officer himself, Sutton pursued the perpetrator, and I say perpetrator, he's a perpetrator fleeing the police, pursued the perpetrator for a minor infraction. The rest of this intelligence did not hold any weight in this. And the arm of the law, instead of being on the perpetrator, who put everyone at risk, including the police officers. So think about that. Isn't that interesting, John? The arm of justice doesn't care about the life of the police officer, because the fact that the police officer had to chase this perpetrator because the perpetrator is now taking off and putting everyone at risk, and the police officer trying to stop this perpetrator, no one cared that the lives of the police officers are also at risk. They can get into a bad car accident and hurt themselves, but that didn't matter. But instead, the arm of justice has turned on the police officers, and that's what we're facing today. That's why it's interesting. We had this earlier comment about how the chase that we're talking about in the 7-2 precinct, Brooklyn South, that crossed into several precincts, was in the early 90s. And they're telling you back then, your pay stub is on the line. And now, not only is the pay stub on the line, but your life is on the line. And we see it time and time again. I think it was John Jones or John Angel that put it up here also, talk about how it's a frowned upon in Newark. We saw a police officer in Newark who sentenced, I think he was sentenced to 25 to life for engaging in a pursuit He ends up jumping on top of the car, has to fire shots. And of course, the burden was put on that police officer. We see it time and time again. I've seen another police officer, I think it was Kentucky, that was sentenced to about a year in jail. And we're seeing time and time again. So why does the khaki pants feel that they're somehow immortal and untouchable from this right now? Do they really believe that this blanket of protection, this short-term blanket of protection from John Shell and Kaz Daughtry is going to last? What are your thoughts on that, John?
Well, I think that they do think that it's going to last. And, that's why. I mean, I don't, again, like I said, dude, all right, let's face it. When you came on the job at 20-something years old, when I came on the job at 20-something years old, we were full of testosterone. We were dumb as shit. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I would be doing it too. I'd be running around the streets right now. I have tight-ass khaki pants. I'd have a medium shirt on. And I'd be chasing the cars too, because what do I see? I see that they get away with absolutely everything, right? Jeffrey Madry gets away. What do we just see? He's not even getting anything. He's not even being prosecuted at all for stuff that any other cop would have gotten in trouble for. Do I think that the charge was bullshit as abuse of authority? I do. But no other cop would have got, that charge is bullshit. Don't worry about it. No, you would have got hung. You would have got 50 days in a year. And he didn't get anything. He didn't get absolutely anything. The soon-to-be Deputy Commissioner of Legal Matters, Jeffrey Madry, didn't get anything. They scoffed him. Why? Because he can't have another black mark on his record because he has so many. So what do they see? They see that everyone gets away with everything, right? Kaz is threatening reporters. He's trying to beat them up. I don't know who the hell that kid's beating up, but he's trying to beat them up.
You might try to beat us up.
They came after this podcast, right? They sent threats against our kids, threats against all this shit, like crazy stuff. They sent mobsters after us. They're out partying to the wee hours of the morning, doing whatever they want. They see that they're untouchable. This is the network they build. If you're at the top, you're untouchable in New York City. I mean, short-sighted, but youth is short-sighted. I was pretty short-sighted in my youth as well. So were you. So I don't blame the kids. Who's not short-sighted and know who's going to come to an end, though, is the people that are putting these kids up. They're not short-sighted.
I was dumb, too. I was dumb back then also. Listen, when I got on the job, I just came out of the Marines. I came home from Iraq. I was full of testosterone. Same thing, like you're saying. It was exuberant. It was energetic. And if my leadership told me, go out there and get them, I would have been involved in every vehicle pursuit also. But we didn't have two retired lieutenants that had a podcast that you say, hey, guys, whoa, you're going to end up in jail. We didn't have that. So that's why it's amazing that they stood up for their leadership and said, and tried to smear us and have this complete smear campaign on social media. We were just trying to help. And that's why at some point you and I just said, you know what? We're wiping our hands with you. We're trying to give you advice, friendly advice. You've heard it from retired members of the service. You hear it from other active members of the service. You're hearing it from us on this podcast. You see the articles coming out. It's as clear as day. If you don't want any more advice, no problem. No problem. They want to support their leadership. I get it right now. They got all the amenities. They feel good. I mean, these guys right now, they feel like superheroes. I mean, we see it. They're jumping on rooftops. Stupidly jumping on rooftops right now. How far these guys have gotten, they don't realize that, hey, you're not immortal. You're not immortal. I get it. You're young. You don't see your own mortality. But, you're a human. You bleed red just like us, and yet sometimes you have to slow it down. But unfortunately, they need the proper leadership, and they're going to see, unfortunately, I say this all the time, even the khaki pants, if you're on here listening, you're a permanent resident. John Shell and Kaz Daughtry, they're guests. They're guests because they're not going to be here forever. You have 20 years, maybe 25 years to do in the police department. They'll be gone within a few years. They're going to age out, or they may leave because of the subpoena of Mayor Eric Adams, or maybe they can't handle the debates that they're having with this podcast. I mean, we'll go into this later, but as far as calling us racist, because that's all they have right now. But I know it's pretty funny, right? You know what's pretty funny also, John Show? It's quite interesting. We're trying to find out, wait a minute. We had a complete smear campaign from your khaki unit, from your khaki pants on social media. Even your legal attorney that rolls around with the khaki pants had nothing to say other than just complete slander and call us racist. And now, isn't that funny? You have other people doing your bidding calling us racist. It's funny. John just said we had it out with the union. We had it out with the khaki pants, right? We had it out with mobsters. Now we have it out with the Jewish people. Now we have it out with the Sharma Society. Hey, listen, who's next? No problem. Bring it on. You want to call us racist? No problem. It's funny you call us racist, but if you're going to call us racist, make sure that you call your boss, Mayor Eric Adams, racist also for the things he said about white people. And hey, John Shell, I hate to tell you, you're white too. Maybe you forgot.
Yeah, there it is. We'll get into that in a little bit, but just on the pursuit, I think, EC is bringing up a good point. So is Jesse James. Jesse James said, so you can say, oh, yeah, we weren't in the pursuit. Meanwhile, the department could check your AVL and tell them otherwise. The AVL is basically, it shows you how fast you're going in real time. And then EC says that here too. AVL can see how fast you're going in real time. So you know what they said in that article. They were going double the speed limit. What was the speed limit in the city? It was probably 20 miles an hour. Right? So they're in DC, they're in downtown, which is probably 20 miles, might even be 15. So what are they doing? 30, 40 miles an hour? It's really not even that fast, but they were going double the speed limit. Oh, wow. So they were operating so recklessly, but that's going to be used against you. Another guy on here asked, like, what should we do? Should we 90 yellow everything? No, but I would think that you need to follow your policy. I would think that you should be following the speed limit. I would think that you don't want to be the guy that's doing double the speed limit. I would think that if the speed limit is 20 miles an hour, because at the end of the day, the minute you step somewhere, I don't care if you said a word, if you didn't say a word, and somebody takes off on foot, on a moped, in a vehicle, that is a pursuit. That is a pursuit. That's it. You're not going to get any of the other nonsense. Oh, we really actually weren't pursuing. Nobody's going to believe you. Whether you just walked out of the store and the person start running and you started to follow, it's a pursuit. That's it. End of the day, it's a pursuit. Go over the radio, be guided by the patrol guide, which says that once the risk to the public outweighs the risk of the crime, you're no longer going to pursue. You're going to terminate the pursuit. So when is that? Probably every time someone runs on you. 99.9% of the time someone runs on you.
That's a great point, brother. That's a great point, John. You know why? Because it's so subjective. You just said it, right? Because it outweighs the crime, or the crime outweighs the incident, right? And that's so subjective because we could say someone is actively shooting, but we're right next to a school. And if you take off, we have kids outside playing, and there's a chance that we could mow down several 5-year-olds and instead of one person shooting. So it's extremely subjective. And it's almost at the point you really are every time you
We just lost Eric Stallings acting up again. They're taking him down. Listen, Jay Ritchie, we appreciate you, brother. Good morning, fellas. I enjoy your content. Keep exposing what they suppress. God bless you guys. Jay Ritchie just donated $19.99 to the channel. Jay, thank you. Thanks a lot, brother. We'll put it back towards the podcast. And Donald Cannon, we appreciate you too, brother. You're always on here, always giving us some insight. Well, I might as well be the second super chat. Keep it up, guys. And he donated $19.99. We'll get Eric. Eric, if you hear me, block out, come back in. But I think that's the problem overall, right? The problem overall is we think that as police officers, so I know I did. I know when I was a cop, I thought that I would be given the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to be given the benefit of the doubt because I'm out here doing what the public expects me to do, right? I'm out here and I'm going to, there's somebody robbing somebody with illegal firearms from a moped. And I'm the guy that gets to go do it. And it's an awesome feeling. I'm the guy that gets to solve this pattern. I'm the guy that's out there at the time that I'm entrusted by my community to go out and find those people. I'm that guy. So I'm out there and I'm looking. And I see that guy on the moped. And I'm like, ooh, it's 2:00 in the morning. Nobody's out. This dude got a gun. This dude's the dude that's robbing people. And boom, he's committing a small infraction. He makes us, whatever it is, we're in an unmarked, we're in a marked, whatever it is, he makes us and he takes off. And now I'm like, he's got a gun on him, right? More than likely, I mean, I was wrong, I think very few times in my career, and I'm sure that most of you would say the same thing. But I pursue him. He hits a curb. He falls, cracks his skull open. I'm going to jail for murder? Does that sound like a fair proposition? You know, and that's, we're seeing it. We're showing it clear as day, but we don't get that from the leadership. The leadership's just throwing these guys out there, not worried at all about them, not worried at all about the consequences. James LaFranco, John Shell is a beta male, scared to leave the job because he'll be nothing without that chief rank. And you know, listen, John Shell is what it is. He's like every other chief. I can't be the guy. I can't be the person that says New York City failed. I'm not going to be the guy that gave it up and say that crime's down, that crime's up. I'm not going to be that guy to say that these policies don't work. I'm going to be the guy that says the NYPD is doing a great job. My guys are out there doing their job, which they are, and I commend them. I commend them that in the height of insanity, there are cops out there still doing their job. But he's not going to be that guy. Nobody else is. Listen, you're not going to take the job. You're not going to work for the Eric Adams administration or the Bill de Blasio administration, or if it becomes whatever other lefty in New York City, Brad Lander or whatever it is, you're not going to take that job without knowing you're going to sit up there and lie to the public, lie to the men and women in New York City, and then go home and pretend like you're the big hardcore Trump supporting conservative and you support law enforcement and you support proactive police work. You're not going to be that guy. You're just going to go out on the news. You're going to go on the Wacko Morning Joe show with Reverend Al Sharpton, and you're going to say how great everything's doing, how crime's down. And then we're all sitting here like, what? Every retired cop is sitting here like, what are you talking about? Every active cop is sitting there saying, what is he talking about? Crime's down? Crime's been down the last 3 years. I don't think crime's been down the last 3 years. I'm going to bring in, while we wait for Eric, I'm going to bring in him on Newsmax talking about crime is down. And I mean, it's a complete, utter lie. It's a complete fantasy at this point. I mean, at this point, these people are just going out on the news, especially Kaz Daughtry and John Shell, and lying to you every day. And the corporate media doesn't expose them. So just for clarification, before we even go on to that, before we even go on to this clip, just for clarification, every year that Eric Adams been in office, crime's been up. Every year. Even at the end of last year, at the end of 2023, they told you crime was down, I forget what it was, 0.6% or whatever. But then we come to find out 3 weeks later, well, you know, we had to upgrade a few hundred crimes, and they're still upgrading crimes from 2023 as we speak. And now we're like, oh, no, crime actually wasn't, overall crime actually wasn't down. It was actually up. So then it was the same was true for the year before, where actually crime was up, right? So they completely lying. Oh, no, crime's down, when in fact the numbers said something different each year. But what they're doing is they're holding on to the arbitrary timeframes, the 28-day period, the 7-day time period, which also are heavily manipulated, right? They're heavily manipulated with misclassification, withholding reports, things of that nature. So then you get into violent major crime. He's going to tell you on this interview, you're going to watch him on this interview. He's going to sit there and he's going to say that violent major crime has been down 3 years in a row. When in fact, under Eric Adams, violent major crime has been up over 32% since Eric Adams took office. My numbers, the place I'm getting that from is whitecollarfraud.com. It's ran by Sam Antar, former chief financial officer of Crazy Eddie's, who's old and retired at this point. He's a statistical genius. He worked for years helping the federal government catch fraudsters. That's why it's white collar fraud. That's what he did in his retirement after he himself committed fraud and got away with it for years and years and years. And he could point out the statistical anomalies and say, wait, this doesn't make sense. So he just took a look at the crime numbers because he's like, it doesn't make sense that crime's down. I live in Manhattan and I'm seeing it everywhere. So he started looking at the numbers. So he gets his data from the NYPD's own numbers. So over and over again, I'll cite his numbers. And they never push back at it. And you know why they never push back at it? Because it's right. His numbers are correct. They're coming from the NYPD's own numbers. So listen to this interview. This is the ultimate embarrassment for all of us. All of us should sit here and say, why is this guy speaking for the New York City Police Department? Why either of them speaking for the New York City Police Department? And they don't represent the officers on the street, and they don't represent retired cops, who cops, more often than none, are very honest people. So here we go. Let's listen to this.
Regardless of party, you saw have you in
Thanks
studio with us. We appreciate it. All right, Chief, regardless of party, you saw the stats there. Most Americans concerned about crime, about rising crime, and believe that we're in trouble here in this country. And that was all under President Biden's watch rather than former Trump's watch. What do you think needs to be done overall for crime in this country? Because we're in a blue city here in New York City, and we know that you guys are crushing it in terms of safety.
Right. So I'll talk about New York City. We have a mayor. We have a Democratic mayor. I'll put it in a football analogy. He throws the ball down the field. He plays offense. He allows us to break open a playbook and be cops. And what does that look like by virtue of that? Our crime is down. Our major violent crime as it relates to shootings and homicides are down 3 years in a row. Our cops have record enforcement 31 years. That's because our mayor, our police commissioner, their first priority is public safety, because without it, we don't have anything. And that's why we're so successful.
Great, you're having success.
So right there, complete, utter lie. What does Sherry say? I think they are preparing for AI robots, humanoids, but in China, gathering intelligence, and then guess who's choosing who gets locked up? I mean, so Shell pulls the wool over Newsmax eyes all the time. I mean, listen, I've been on Newsmax. I've been on this show a lot. And I mean, I'm actually disappointed. I'm actually very disappointed in the host. They sat there. You could totally tell that there was a conversation had prior to them going on. You guys are killing it as far as it's related to crime. Really? You know the numbers. You know that he's lying. And he sat up there and he talks about record enforcement. Why do they have record enforcement? Is it because the average cop on the street is involved in proactive police work? No, it's because crime's out of control. Why are the most amount of guns in New York City history been taking off New York City streets? Why? Because there's been no time in this in recent history where cops have been retrieving this amount of illegal firearms. Eric's trying to jump back in. Sorry. Have been able to do this because there's so many people on New York City streets carrying firearms that they're tripping over them. They're absolutely tripping over themselves finding guns. You're getting guns. People, you saw the other day we put on the show, we had a guy sleeping on a subway platform, sleeping on the staircase, and right in his waistband, he's not even trying to hide it, illegal firearm, right? And this is what's happening. And why? Why is that? Why are crimes happening at a ginormous rate? Why are guns being carried at a huge rate? It's not John Shell's fault. It's not the police department's fault. It's the progressive left. It's the legislation that's been cheered on by guys like Eric Adams that have led to this. We're not going to prosecute anybody for anything. And there's a sense in New York City that, oh, it's all good. I could fight with the cops. I could injure a cop. I could injure a member of the public. I could rob people. I could carry illegal firearms. I could steal cars. I could evade the police. And what's going to happen to me? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing's going to happen. Crazy 10-7 says his chin won't save him. Too Smooth says first priority is public safety. The PC is in the Dominican Republic as we speak. You're right. You're absolutely right. You know, that's exactly what's going on. I mean, it's the party department. If any of you haven't seen the logo that we've put out numerous times, it's a party department. And what it is it's instead of having the Indian and the Pilgrim together inside of the New York City seal, it's a DJ in a DJ booth playing music. And it's the Republic of New York Party Department. So if you don't follow our social media, all the links are below wherever you're watching or listening to this. You know, follow us on X, follow us on Instagram. We lost Eric. I'm going to kill him. He's still trying to get back on. He's on the wrong device. So Eric, if you hear that, your device isn't connected, get something up. But yeah, So clearly manipulation of the crime numbers. Here we go. We brought him back in. Eric, we saved you. We said that we saved you from the stalling, bro.
But dude, I don't know what happened. I had a power outage. Something happened. I definitely lost a fuse or something like that. I apologize to listeners out here, friends of the podcast. I've had some issues this past week, but you know what? We're hanging through it. Maybe it's John Shell and Kaz Dortch wishing me bad luck. But hey, listen, something bad happens, you turn to something good. So where we at, brother? Thanks for holding it down.
No, I was just talking about. I played John Shell's Newsmax interview where he says that they're killing it. That Eric Adams gave him the West Coast style playbook. That there's more. We've been more proactive than any time in history. Enforcement's up, and it's because of the mayor. It doesn't matter that he's a Democrat. It doesn't matter that he wants everybody out of jail and he doesn't like police and he says police are racist. Doesn't matter. He lets us do the things we got to do. We got the West Coast style playbook with Eric Adams and how great public safety is, and public safety is the number one priority, and that's why crime's down. And the Newsmax anchors are sitting there like, you're doing a great job. You guys are great. So if you guys are watching this too, you guys are a joke too. That actually diminished you in my eyes.
Listen, first of all, these guys have absolutely, if there was any thread, just any piece of dignity left, they have zero dignity left. These guys, honestly, they're pompous asses. John Shell and Kaz Dortch have absolutely no moral principle. I don't even know how they go home anymore and just look at their family members in the face and just say that they're actually men and stand on any moral principle. I mean, it's at the point where John Shell is almost electioneering for Mayor Eric Adams, where he says, we have a Democratic mayor, but we play offense. He throws the ball down the lane and allows us to have the playbook, the West Coast style playbook. You sound like a reckless cowboy, a fake, phony, tough guy. Stop with this fake, phony, tough guy. No one respects this fake, phony, tough guy attitude. They respect stoicism and professionalism. It's not about trying to respect somebody with the muscles. It's respecting someone that's a scholar. It's someone that can actually speak from a place of reasonableness. You're in a position of leadership. You're supposed to be calm. You're supposed to be stoic. That doesn't take away from being a warrior. You can still be a warrior at the same time and actually support the men and women and actually support the correlation with that with public safety. But John Shell and Kaz Dortch are just complete idiots. Absolutely, and they embarrass themselves. And the fact that they just blatantly lie to the public. When Sam Antar, if anybody watches on X, watch Sam Antar, convicted felon, former chief financial officer for Crazy Eddie's, which was a store in Staten Island and various other places. He debunks the crime stats that are lied upon, gaslit by John Shell and Kaz Dortch using their own stats. How do they lie? Blatantly lie through their teeth to the public. It's disgusting. These are law enforcement officials. If anybody we should trust, it should be them, but they're lying to the public. And the fact that the news channel, we can no longer trust. There's no more credibility to mainstream media, right? We have to rely on independent journalism, just like this podcast, right? Look, we're a self-funded podcast. We have issues with power, Wi-Fi, but it doesn't matter. What's the reality? The reality is we're telling the truth, right? Our friends, our listeners of the podcast that are on right now, you're telling the truth also. You're telling the truth because most of you are active and retired and you had experience. Some of you don't have any law enforcement experience, but you have family members, you have friends, and you understand what the police department's going through. And you're saying, wait a minute. I see with my own two eyes what's going on in New York City. How can they tell the public this? I see it myself. I feel it. We all know it. If crime was not out of control, we wouldn't even be having these discussions. So it's disgusting that they're all in cahoots together, lying to the public, and have the news, you guys are doing such a great job. Yes, John Shell is boasting that they have made more arrests. Of course they're making more arrests. There's more crime. If there's more crime, there's more arrests to be made. That's not a good thing. Making more arrests is not necessarily a good thing. It's a sign that there's a huge problem out there. And there is a crime spree. Unlike what they tell the public, their lies are lies. I don't care what they call us. You can call us racist, call us what you want. But you know what? You'll never call us it to our face because you're scared. You are unwilling to come on this podcast because you can't hold a room with John and myself because we speak the truth. And we will absolutely put you on that soapbox and debunk your lies. That's why you won't come on this podcast. Not a deflection and use the race card. You won't come on this podcast because you have nothing to offer and you can't offer the truth.
Yeah, 100%. So Sherry says Rudy Giuliani interview part 1 and 2 this week with Dr. Phil on his TV channel, Merit Street TV. You guys could get a spot on this platform, just a thought. So Sherry, just so we're aware that I used to go on corporate media a lot, Fox News, Newsmax, but it seems like in recent times, all of a sudden, since Kaz Daughtry and Kaz Daughtry and John Shelton going on these platforms, the producers of these shows no longer call me. I kind of feel like there was a deal there to not get me on, because obviously we can't have the truth going out there that violent crimes actually up 32%, right? Because it completely debunks what New York City mayor is saying. It completely, and then the police department's not going to be friendly to these corporate media, right? They're not going to be friendly to them. They're not going to give them the drone show where you're going to watch the failure to launch, which we're going to get into in a little bit. So, I mean, listen, we're not in it for the corporate media. I'm not trying to be a news anchor. Either is Eric. So it really doesn't matter. When they want the truth, they call. When they don't, they want the fluff. They want the fluff to fill the audience and the feel-good stories. They're gonna go, oh, look, we had John Shelton, great guy. We're laughing, we're joking, we're telling things behind the scene, and we're going to say how great New York City is doing, even though there's parts of it that look like Mogadishu. There's parts in New York City where there's absolutely no law whatsoever. There's vendors set up everywhere. Go to Canal Street. Take the outside the ferry. There's illegal vendors everywhere. Everybody's selling stolen goods, unlicensed food, undercooked food, things of this nature. And there's zero enforcement going on. The entire city smells like marijuana. There's mentally ill people everywhere. Crime is out of control. Elderly people are being assaulted at rates we've never seen before. And violent crimes up 32%. And yet the corporate media is going to sit there, have these two idiots on, sit there and tell you, no, everything's good. Eric Adams doing a great job. Oh, no, he's not worried about this federal investigation at all. Oh, no, none of us got indictments either. We can't really talk about that, right? So we're not worried about the corporate media. I'm not worried about getting on any platform. Either is Eric. We're doing this out of love. We're doing this because we enjoy doing it. And honestly, if we weren't doing it on this platform, we'd just be bitching to each other over the phone, talking about it anyway. So we figure, why not put these conversations out into real life, what people are actually having, right? And that was the initial basis of this entire podcast, right? Is that we're going to just have the conversations that people are actually having at their dinner table. People like John Shell and Kaz Daughtry are having at their dinner table. They're having at these parties. But when they get on the news, they're telling you something else. They're telling you something different. So call us what you will. We're going to get into that right now. So Sal Greco puts out a funny-ass video. He puts out a funny-ass video. I'll work on pulling that up when it talks. But the video is Kaz Daughtry doing karaoke at a shaman event. So he puts it out. We laugh. Everyone will share it, make a meme, whatever. It's a joke, right? Is it a big deal that he did karaoke? Absolutely not. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal that people in the police department enjoy themselves sometimes, break out a little bit and have some fun. But it gets a little crazy after that. Eric, what's your initial thoughts on the video while I get it up here?
It's hilarious. I can't believe how thin-skinned the upper echelon of police departments, particularly Kaz Daughtry and John Shell. I've had numerous times. If I went to an event and I did something like karaoke, which I didn't do, and I'm not against it, I think it's kind of funny. I would assume my guys would make posters of me, pictures of us. I would set up the supervisor's dinner every year. Annually, I would set up the supervisor's dinner, and guys would always get on me because I'd always pick a fancy place, Roots Chris or some nice steakhouse. And it would be a minimum of $125, $150 a man. And right away, they would put up wanted posters and say that I was wanted for grand larceny and make funny memes about me. I would laugh. It was hysterical. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what Kaz Daughtry and John Shell, you should be laughing with us. Instead, you're taking this personal and you're getting upset by it. Somehow this targets your ego. But honestly, that's why I don't take it personal, because really you're not targeting me and John. You're getting mad at John and myself because of your own securities. You really need to dig deep and ask yourself why you feel this way. Because even if we didn't like you or we thought the worst of you, right? What someone else thinks of you is none of your business anyway. What do you care what we think of you? And if it's a funny meme, you should be laughing at it. You shouldn't laugh at it, then your men and women will laugh at it, and so will everybody else. And before you know, that joke would go away. This is hysterical. It's pretty funny. By the way, I just want to say I saw Patrick Jordan's on here. Chief, how you doing, brother? Thanks for being a friend to the podcast. He did say, I don't know if you mentioned it, John. What is this West Coast style policing? What is this? That's pretty funny. I think when he says West Coast policing, that he's kind of referring to these vehicle pursuits, because the West Coast, and I don't know, maybe Patrick Jordan could tell us, but the West Coast, in the eyes of the NYPD, is known for vehicle pursuits where it's not as dense and they have freeways. And of course, the O.J. Simpson trial is like the pinnacle for car chases. So that when we think of the West Coast, we think of car chases. So I assume that's what.
No, that's not what he's. No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying.
I think he's alluding to that.
Saying this is what he's saying.
Well, hold on a second. I think he's alluding to that because when he says West Coast style, he talks about vehicle pursuits. We could put that together.
That's not what he's saying. This is what he's saying. He's saying West Coast style playbook. He's talking about football. He's talking about offense. We're playing offense. We're on the West Coast style. He's not saying West Coast style of cops. Like, he's not relating it to the cops. He's not saying, oh, we're doing West Coast policing. He's saying West Coast style offense, which a West Coast style offense is a run and gun offense. That's what.
Okay, well, this is far beyond. Listen, I was never a football guy. I'm a big basketball guy in other sports, but I guess so. I thought maybe it's too much. That's too much for him to read between the lines. I thought he was referring it to his West Coast style policing. Is that what you're saying here?
No, yeah, but that's not what he's saying. He's relating it to football. He's relating it to sports. He's saying we're on offense. We're on offense. We're not playing defense. We're on offense.
Is it West Coast style football?
His pursuits are throwing the ball down the field.
Gotcha.
But they ain't scoring touchdowns, so I don't know what he's related to. But that's what he means by it. That's what he's talking about. He wasn't trying to make the NYPD.
I thought he was actually being metaphoric and talking about the car pursuits. But okay, I guess that's what happens when you read between the lines. I'm sorry, John Shelley. You just speak about what's on the surface here. Okay.
So anyway, obviously this video gets leaked out by someone in the Sham room. They leak it to Sal Greco, obviously, right? They obviously leaked this video out to Sal Greco on purpose. They wanted to get out there. So Sal Greco tweets about it. We laugh about it. We repost it, right? Let's watch the video.
Someone needs to send a drone in to take that mic away from him. Listen, it's hysterical. We need to send that drone and get that mic away from him quick. He's got no rhythm, man. Honestly, but it's funny. Listen, at the same token, it's funny. Listen, I will give him credit that he's willing to embarrass himself, right? That says a lot about a person, right? You need to be humorous. So there is still some good in him. I will say that is a good thing that he's willing to embarrass himself, but he doesn't like it when the humor comes from John McCary, Eric Dim, and Sal Greco. When it comes from us, it's not funny anymore. Now it's personal. Why are you taking it personal with us? What makes it different, John? What makes it different when we're laughing in comparison to everybody else laughing? I know why. What do you think, John?
I just say he has a huge ego and he doesn't like being made fun of, which is a joke because you're right. He's out here, he's letting loose. I would expect to be made fun of. You would expect to be made fun of. And he's actually not a bad singer. He's singing Chris Stapleton, Tennessee Whiskey. It's actually hard to hit notes. I don't do karaoke myself, but I would have. So I had worked with the Shamrim and 6'6". So I had worked with them about 10 years ago. So they're very familiar with me, all these people. So Sal Greco put it out. And then the quotes start coming from all the Shamrim. These are the devil's people, Kaz. These are the devil's people. Don't let them distract you. You guys are doing a great job keeping New York City safe, even though hate crimes are up tremendously under Eric Adams. And they're not talking about that. It's particularly hate crimes against Jewish people, it's funny that they're sitting there telling Kaz that he's doing a great job. And they're saying that we're the devil's people. So for those of you that were making that term, saying that myself, Eric, and Sal are the devil's people, I just want to let you know who actually the devil's people are. The devil's people are the people who are watching New York City turn back rapidly into 1970, 1980, into the crime trends that we're seeing in the 90s and seeing crime that we've actually never seen before. The devil's people are the people that are watching blatant corruption come out of top officials in the NYPD and in the mayor's office. The devil's people are the people that are sitting there and dancing and out drinking at night while cops are killing themselves and fleeing the NYPD at enormous rates. The devil's people are the people that are watching New York City residents and New York City businesses flee to other states. The devil's people are the people that are watching all of this and not saying a word and partying and drinking the night away because they want to be close to the king and they want to lather the king with gifts. Because obviously, everyone knows Kaz Daughtry is going to be the next police commissioner in the New York City Police Department. So the Shamrim wants to build this relationship with him. So they have to sit there and put themselves in front of any criticism. But what they're not telling you is, we didn't leak the video. You did. Your people did. Button up your own ship. And then maybe the jokes won't come out. But it's a joke. And it's jest. And then immediately after we're called the devil's people, there's an entire smear campaign to say that because of the memes we make, and I'm sure if you guys follow us on social media, you know about the memes that are made. And honestly, we don't even make them. So it's even funnier. It's even funnier. And we're called racist. They're racist. Racist, because that's their go-to. And the reason they're saying that John Schell and Kaz Daughtry will never come on the show is because we're overtly racist and they won't help build our platform.
Well, you know what? It's interesting about this Shamrim Society. I'm Jewish myself. I was a member of the Shamrim Society. I used to pay my dues to the Shamrim Society. But I decided to withdraw from the Shamrim Society quite a long time ago, and I'm glad I did, looking back at it now, because they're absolutely ridiculous that they're playing pretend here. Why? You know why? Because they want to be like the Hispanic Society, right? The Hispanic Society is the front runners right now for the police department, for a fraternal organization, where everyone's getting promoted because they got the connections to the police commissioner. So the Shamrim Society wants to butter up to the king so they can get their people some benefits also. That's the only reason I can think, because, hey, I don't know if they forgot, since October 8th, day in and day out, we have protests and riots in the city. We see a high level of anti-Semitism towards Jews. We have Jews that are scared to go to school. Do they not remember that? The school situation? It's how quickly we forget, but they're doing a great job. Kaz Daughtry wants to gaslight the public, and they want to gaslight their members and say that they're doing a great job and actually deflect what's going on with this platform and call us racist. Easy. Just pull the race card and call us racist because we make memes. You know what? I don't care what you say. You guys are all idiots, absolutely playing pretend. They won't come on this podcast. We know they won't come on this podcast because they're terrified, because they can't hold a room with John and myself and talk about the real issues. Because if they lie, John and I will pull their card and say, wait a minute, that's a lie. Here's the stats. They can bamboozle the public. They can bamboozle mainstream media, but they can't bamboozle John, myself, and our friends and our listeners to this podcast. You know what's interesting? They're calling us racist. The overwhelming majority of our listeners, our friends of this podcast, are active and retired members of the service, of the NYPD and other police departments. So if you're calling us racist, our friends that are listening right now, you're calling them racist too. That's what you're doing, because they're listening to us. And we're engaging them, our friends. We have comments. They're engaging us. They have great input. We're all talking about the same issue. So are we all racist? That's what they're saying right now. We're all racist. They're terrified. They're meek. They are weak. You know what? I have a word for them. It rhymes with wussy. And that's what they are. They are terrified. They are scared little boys.
Yeah, so this X handle, Inside Details, has about 10,000 followers. They get about 0 likes on everything they post and 0 engagement. So they put this out. The Chief of Patrol and the DC of Operations clearly are not shy about conversing with all types of media outlets in regards to crime and police work. However, they mentioned in the past that they will never share any type of platform with any person or group who masquerades their criticism under the banner of overt racism. It's funny, no one's talking about the racism of Eric Adams, where he said that every day when he was in the New York City Police Department, he was unbelievable and he was kicking those crackers' asses. And for the life of me, I still don't know what he was talking about, because he had 0 arrests. So he wasn't out there arresting people. He wasn't out there outworking the white cops, right? Because I don't know anyone that served that long with that little amount of arrests. Maybe one or two other guys, but they're in a select group. He's in that group. Normally, you got to be in the 100 club to be recognized as a cop. You got to have over 100 arrests, right? But Eric Adams in a different club. He has under the double digit club. I don't even know. That's a very elite club too. Real. You got to be a real zero to have on the double digit arrest. Hard to be. But completely don't talk about that type of racism. Completely don't talk about this is the chocolate administration. Look at all this chocolate. That's not racist, right? And then completely ignore the fact that he sat there at Ed Caban's appointment and he said that the NYPD has a great crime fighting profile, but they have an image problem. When you look at the NYPD, you don't see the diversity. You don't see the youth. And he was talking about the old white chiefs. And John Shell's sitting there like this. He's not talking about me. He's not talking about me. And he's sitting there smiling while he's talking about men just like him, saying he wants to get rid of all of them. None of that's fine. All that's fine for this news handle. All of that's fine for, all of that's fine to support this mayor. He's not a racist. We are for making the memes, right? And then what they did is they put a compilation of memes. One of them was Eric Adams as he was Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory. And that was a meme that followed the news cycle, right? That's the meme. Eric Adams made that meme. He just keeps going up in news count. Look at all this chocolate. This is the most chocolate you ever seen. So we did a meme with him as Willy Wonka. And all of a sudden, we're supposed to be afraid that you're going to call us racist. So I was getting all these messages last night that I better apologize. And I told a lot of people on social media, here's my apology. I'm not apologizing for shit. And nobody's apologizing because we didn't do anything wrong. We're making fun of the shit that's going on. You could try to intimidate us with this bullshit racism like you had your legal team do in the past. We don't care. We're not afraid of it. You guys are cowards. That's why you won't come on here. You know why you won't come on here? Because violent major crimes up 32%, and you've been lying to the public for the last 3 years.
The union started a debate and started to fight with this podcast, try to suppress New York's Finest Unfiltered podcast. They got the smackdown. The Khaki Pants try to suppress this podcast under the leadership of John Shell and Kaz Daughtry. They got the smackdown. We got attacked by mobsters. They got the smackdown. And now the Shaman Society doing their bidding, bootlicking, as Sal Greco likes to say, I love that word, bootlicking for John Shell and Kaz Daughtry, and they're going to get the smackdown too. Because when you call someone racist, you better have some material, you better have something, facts to actually back it up. But you know what? We don't care. This is New York's Finest Retarded and Unfiltered. We're going to say what we think is necessary. We're going to say the truth. And if the truth is a scary thing, well, guess what? We're not going anywhere. It's going to continue. The truth is coming. And if you don't like the memes, guess what? You just created some more, because more are coming. And it's exactly what John just said. If you don't like hearing about chocolate, maybe your mayor should not be talking about being chocolate. Maybe he should not talk about the image of the police department. He even said, he was quoting the paper about the old male. We have to replace the old males, the old white males on the job. But listen, apparently the Shaman Society has something to benefit. I'm sure they're trying to compete with the Hispanic Society. Kaz Daughtry, listen, maybe you want to have the rabbi convert him to Judaism, and he'll be part of the Shaman Society. Whatever works. Whatever to benefit your members, because that's really what's going on. And you're doing the bidding for them, and you're completely slandering us. You're afraid to actually put our names in here. And of course, you're talking directly to us. And Kaz Daughtry and John Shell, you're some scared little boys. You can't actually, again, you always have these arguments with this podcast, debating with us through subliminal messages, and now you have someone else do the bidding. You're a fake, phony, tough guy, John Shell. You can't do it yourself. Didn't you say you're going to push back on the media and not head to 233 Broadway anymore? I think you need to get your ass at 233 Broadway soon, because you are a coward. You're afraid to come on this podcast to talk about real life stuff that's going on, crime stats, because you know we're going to debunk your bullshit. You two, honestly, if there was any shred of dignity that you had, or maybe any respect that I had left for you, it wasn't very much. It's gone. And I say the same thing, like, John, you know what? Here you go. Take in the face.
Yeah, I have no respect for them either. You know, about a year ago, the same dude that tweeted out, and I think he's the head of the Shamroom now, Brooklyn South Shamroom, he that tweeted out that we're the devil's people and don't listen to them because you're doing such a great job and they're lying and we're racist and all this shit. That same dude called me about a year ago, and he's like, "Oh, you know, John Shell was asking about you." I was like, "All right, good. Tell him to stop asking about me. Give him my phone number." And he's like, "You know, I think he's trying to send you a message." I was like, so he sent you to send me the message? I'm like, and I went off. I was like, I don't care. You tell him to be a man and pick up the phone and call me. He has my number. You have my number. You can give it to him, you know? And so now it's laughable like a year later. So, I mean, and listen, I'm going to be in New York soon and I'm going to come pay you guys a visit. We're going to talk about it, you know, because it's a bunch of bullshit. It's absolutely a bunch of bullshit. And, you know, I'm not going to be afraid by these fake ass. We're going to pretend like we watch Goodfellas and The Godfather too many times. And you're going to pretend like you're going to do something to me because I'm absolutely not afraid of it at all. I've grew up around hardened people my entire life, and I'm not afraid of it. I'm not. The only person I'm afraid of is God. I'm afraid to leave my family behind without them being my children, without them being able to take care of themselves. But after that, I'm good. So you're not going to scam me at all. You're not going to scam me at all. It's not going to see my handshake. You're not going to see my voice stutter. I'm not afraid of it because I'm not saying anything wrong. I'm saying the exact truth. You are the people that lying. So send whatever messages you want, but you could be a man and pick up the phone instead of sitting there fighting with your conscience at the bar at night, sending these drunken, cryptic tweets to us, right? That should be embarrassing. You're embarrassing the uniform. You're embarrassing every other chief of patrol that became before you and embarrassing your career and your legacy. You could just be a man and pick up the phone, but you won't. And by the way, last thing, you guys leaked the video, Shamrim. So you could go on your whole smear campaign. There ain't going to be no apologies coming from anybody. So that's the one thing. Let's get on to the drones. Kaz Daughtry brings up drones now. He's got to interject at the Newsmax thing, right? He can't have let John.
Can't help himself, brother. Can't help himself.
Can't let John Shell get in there and have too much to say, right? He's got to be the voice of the police department. So where is it? I think that came out after. Oh, here we go. I got it. Okay. It's coming up to the stage now. Here, let's get into the drones, and you're going to hear some tall tales being told. This is all the same interview, folks. It was lie after lie after lie. Here we go. Let's play fairy tale. This is story hour.
It's like cops doing the work.
Sure. That's great to
And
hear.
if we could just stay in Senator Park for a quick second. On this Friday, our DFR program, Jonah's First Responder Program.
Drone's First Responder Program. Okay.
Yep,
DFR.
Jonah's First Responder Program, meaning that the drone operators will be at one police plaza in Manhattan, a remote location, answering 911 calls from one police plaza. So the drone will be responding to 911 calls in Central Park autonomously.
That's incredible.
So
the technology is amazing.
So the future is here.
The future is here. I already have that in 5 different precincts. This is going to be our 6th.
So how does it work? Say I'm in Central Park and I need to call 911. A drone is showing up, or
No, so let's use the.
Hi, Bob. Your drone has arrived.
Bob, we got to talk to this guy. Help.
Yeah. Well,
Help me.
what if I told you that when you call 911, maybe about next year, that if you're having a cardiac arrest or you're having some sort of medical issue where we got to drop Narcan or AED, the drone will be dropping that.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Don't tell anybody.
I was going to say, what if I told you?
You won't tell anybody.
Yeah.
We'll ask you next
But
time.
yeah, so let's use the incident that happened with the attempted rape in Central Park, right? If people are walking on an area where the police can't see them, like on these paths, these walkways, our drone can autonomously fly in there, and I'm going to have the drones autonomously flying, looking for crime, and also flying over people and making sure that they are safe. But they can go into areas in the park where the cops can't go, where they got to get out their car and walk a couple of minutes to get there, as opposed to a drone can get there to any area in the park in less than a minute.
Wow.
And this is our mayor and police commissioner breaking out the West Coast style playbook and saying, "Go run the place, guys." And this is what we're doing. We're different than the city, and we're working hard and we're holding the city together. And doesn't matter what kind of mayor you are.
Yeah.
If you're about public safety, you're about public safety, and that's what we're all about.
But also Mayor Eric Adams here in New York City, he was a member of the NYPD.
I think John Shell has a little stuff on his lip right now because, man, he's like bootlicking Mayor Eric Adams like you wouldn't believe. It's quite interesting because when I was on the job towards the end of my tenure and Mayor Eric Adams met his inception, the trash talk that I heard by Mayor Eric Adams, it's completely in opposition for what I'm hearing now. But now he's the best thing since sliced bread. It's great. Kaz Daughtry, he really is like a little child. He has to speak. Hold on. Let me tell you this. Let's just debunk this right now. John and I already debunked this on prior podcasts, but we'll debunk it again. There's spots that the cops can't see, but guess what? There's blind spots that the drones can't see either. Maybe, I don't know if this is like a My Cousin video movie, but everybody remember My Cousin Video? Could you see through this screen and through all these trees and then bushes? But guess what? The same thing is for those drones, right? They can't see through all those trees and those bushes. Hello, Kaz Dorsey. Why don't you just say the truth? It's an eye in the sky. There's nothing wrong with saying that. Hey, listen, it's a supplemental tool for our police officers when they're responding. And if we have the capability to drop a Narcan, guess what? Who's actually administering that Narcan? We can't remove the human element. That's why I always say the human element is the primary source. The technology is a secondary source. It's a supplemental tool to assist the police officers because the drone is not taking that Narcan and actually administering it if you actually have that technology that you speak of. If you actually have this remote technology to deploy a Narcan to a police officer, guess who's administering it? The human element, him or herself, not the drone. The drone is not a first responder. The drone is a secondary tool. It's a source. It's a resource. It is not a responder. It's great. Let's put a sexy name on this, but let's speak reality. Nothing replaced the human element. The human police officer with their boots on the ground is waiting for that Narcan, and the drones, they have to face blind spots just as the human element, even more because of places they can't navigate, such as trees and other elements of the environment. Kaz Daughtry, more gaslighting. He loves, oh, it's in our 6th precinct. It's another resource. Can you stop celebrating that you're some type of that you're creating some type of legacy? It's an eye in the sky. Great, thank you. Move on.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was complete lie after lie. So right now they don't have the capability of dropping AEDs or Narcan. Right? But if they did, like Eric said, it's supplemental. You still need an officer there. So that's one, right? So like that is a supplemental. That's great. Hey, you could drop me the AED, or you could drop me the an AED is an automated external defibrillator, which if you have a heart attack, it could be placed on you to resuscitate you. Summer Side of Life asked what 233 Broadway is. That is the pension section where you would go to retire. That's the location for that. So that's what that is. But Narcan is also used to administer you if you're suffering from an opioid overdose, which could happen literally to anybody today with the amount of fentanyl that's coming across our borders. You could touch something on the ground and have an overdose from an opioid, right? So you could get a fentanyl overdose. You're not even a user. You just picked up a piece of trash to throw it in the garbage can because you're trying to clean up the park that day and do your part as a citizen. A Narcan would be administered to bring you back to life, but it's basically a thing that you have to break and spray up someone's nose. So if you're having that, you're not going to be able to use it yourself. So if the drone drops it on your chest, I mean, it's supplemental. What are you doing? You're not going to be able to do it. Same thing with the defibrillator. If you're having a heart attack, you're not going to be able to defib yourself unless you know it, and then maybe you could. Chances of that are minimal. So it's absolutely supplemental. The other thing he says is they're going to be flying around autonomously. Autonomous means that they fly around on their own and they navigate on their own, which these drones aren't going to do. They're going to be operated by a human. So they're not flying autonomously. So there's another lie. The other thing he says is they could respond to any part of the park in under 1 minute. I don't believe that at all. And I have this thing up on the screen right now, and you see the bike path, and you see on either side of the bike path, heavily wooded area. The drone's not flying through those trees on either side. So I think, again, you heard another lie. I mean, it was just lie after lie after lie. And then when the host actually is like, wait, so how does this work? I call 911 and the drone shows up. Right? And he goes, when you've seen in the rape. Yeah, okay, that's a great example. What's the drone going to do there besides follow the guy with the camera? It's not stopping the rape. It's not arresting the perpetrator. And there was another interview that was done after this. The last question the lady asks, she says, a lot of your critics are saying that you're trying to replace the human police officer. And he said, no, that's a misconception. That's a lie. That's not true. That's not what we're trying to do at all. This is supplemental to the police officer. But I think clear as day, you hear him saying here that he's replacing the police officer. We got this great drone. Well, not we. I have this great drone program, and 5 precincts now, and we're about to go into the 6th. But he told you lie after lie. He completely lied about the capabilities of the drone, and he's presenting it as the drone is a first responder, and the drone is not a first responder. The title of the program itself, Drone as a First Responder, tells me everything I need to know about this program. You're not concerned about the mass amount of people that are retiring, the 200 cops that are leaving every month that you have the complete inability to replace. 200 a month, 2,400 a year. I contest it's even more than that.
Well, there's 2 things here, right? So you either sell this as it's a primary source or it's just total clickbait, because the name of this program suggests that it is a primary source, the Drone First Responder Program. Police officers are first responders. They're the first ones to respond to a scene. That's exactly what that statement is saying, that the drone is the first to respond to a scene. But when they actually were inquisitive and they asked that question, because I think they were kind of shocked by it, even though this was totally prepared and this whole interview was prepped and it was a ground ball for them, but they're like, wait a minute. So this is going to be the first response instead of the police officer? And he knew at that point they totally caught him. And I don't even think he was prepared for that. No, because it's not the first response. It's supplemental. It's a secondary source. You know what, John? I'm quite interested. Where did he get this idea to say supplemental and secondary source? It might be from those 2 racist lieutenants, John McCarry and Eric Dim, because I'm pretty sure we've said that time and time again on this podcast. But again, thank you so much for listening. And that's why they won't come on this podcast again, because John and I will be like, wait a minute, we're not going to be, we're not going to be unprofessional, but we're actually going to call out the truth. Hold on a minute. Because what Kaz Daughtry is saying is he doesn't even realize, unknowingly, he is an advocate for defund and abolish the police by replacing police officers, the human element, with artificial intelligence. That's exactly what he's saying. He is not saying that, hey, these drones are an eye in the sky. It's a great tool to help the police officer make an apprehension, to help the police officer save someone's life, to assist the police officer. He's saying that this is replacing the police officer. We did not hear that verbiage come out of his mouth at any point, because that's not what's happening here. He wants to gaslight the public, including the news media, this mainstream outlets, because they don't understand policing themselves. Unlike John, myself, and our active listeners, our friends of the podcast, you know policing. You know that he's lying. We all know that he's lying. And that's why he won't come on this podcast. He and John Shell are not coming on this podcast while our friends and our listeners are engaged in a conversation that have the knowledge that we all have to ask questions, say, wait a minute, what are you saying here? You're lying. That's why they won't come on the podcast. So they're not just calling John and myself racist, they're calling us all of us racist, because we have the ability to challenge their lies. That's what this is about. They want to fight the truth, and we can challenge those lies.
Yeah, so Chen says are they gonna be dropping methadone to the corners too while they're at it? You know what? Probably in the future, right? With this whole whatever it is, harm reduction that they're doing in New York City, where they're condemning drug addicts to a life of being addicted to drugs, right? Oh, we're going to give you clean. We're going to stop overdoses, and all overdoses continue to rise across the country. This whole harm reduction is a joke. And it's a woke New York City Police Department. So it wouldn't shock me, bro. And then Chen's, you ask, what about the foggy days? It has thermal sensors, the drone. It could actually see through the fog. It's actually there, like in circumstances like where you can't get a helicopter up, the drones are actually better. And honestly, it actually presents more of a cost savings to the taxpayer than putting a chopper up in most situations. I know obviously the capabilities of chopper are much greater, and they could stay up much longer. So that's one thing. Somebody asked, Sherry asked, I think, or I don't know who it was. We got a lot of comments in here. I'll try to get to most of them if we could. But somebody asked, are they going to be both running at the same time, the drones? And I'm going to say right now, no. We spoke about, I think we had Marlon Bethel on here, and he was saying how the drones, at most, the high quality drones could operate for a 45-minute period. And then they have to be charged for a large amount of time, up to 2 to 3 hours. So there's going to be a lot. The majority of the day for a drone is going to be spent on the charger, and they're only going to be up 45 minutes at a clip if they were out there to be used as patrol but it sounds more like they're going to go based on jobs. Real convoluted. I honestly think the drone's a great thing, but I think this drone as a first responder program, what you will see come out of it is it will eventually be taken down because it's going to create so many manpower issues to keep these drones up, to keep these drones manned, to keep these drones operating that we never had in the past. And in a diminished police department, you're not going to be able to actually use these properly. They're going to cause more problems than they are going to ever solve anything.
And by the way, before my power went out, I was about to thank some of the listeners that are actively listening, engaged with us right now, that donated money to the podcast. I want to say thank you. I really appreciate it. That's really nice of you to dip into your pockets. I really appreciate that. It's very nice of you, by the way. So I just want to say, again, Kaz Daughtry boxed himself into these statements by advocating for defund and abolish the police. That's exactly what they're doing, removing the human element. I think that the drone program is great, and kudos to you that you want to push that. But let's not lie to the public and tell them that's a primary source. Any tool that is accessible to a police officer, that a police officer could utilize to save someone's life, or save the life of themselves, or to make an apprehension, to do their job, to help them, is fantastic. That's what anyone should do. You go to work, if you're a construction worker, you have a tool belt, a hammer, nails, whatever the case, a staple remover, different tools to assist you doing your job. It's the same thing. You're a police officer, more tools that could contribute to you doing a better job, that can assist you, are fantastic. It's very valuable. But what goes along with that is we need experienced, good working, hardworking police officers, the human element. I don't care if we move forward, it's 2050. We can never replace the human element. Somebody actually said, I think it was EC. It's pretty funny, actually. He said he can't wait till AI replaces the police officer on the TS. That's pretty funny. TS, if any, active retired police officers, TS, is a telephone switchboard operator. For anybody who's listening that's not NYPD or an outside police officer, the TS is the telephone switchboard phone in every precinct or housing location, transit, where a police officer answers that phone and directs calls to whichever department of that precinct they need to go. That's pretty funny. And I do think eventually that's a great source also. If we can utilize artificial intelligence to assist in directing phone calls, that's another police officer that could be out there in the streets, the human element doing field work, which is so important. We need police officers with the boots on the ground. We have a diminished police department. And he talks about the technology. If we can find technology to help the police officers so our detectives in detective squads right now can actually do follow-ups and investigate their cases, because these cases are being short-sighted right now as they're utilized for omnipresence. That's all I see from this administration is omnipresence and technology. Let's put the two together to do smart, intrusive police work, not go out there and be reckless and do these vehicle pursuits. That is a tactic that should be avoided, completely avoided, because of the financial liability. Now what we see is the liability for prosecution and persecution. Let's not get our police officers arrested, indicted, and lose their lives because their hearts are in the right place. Let's start helping them. Let's have real conversations. They don't want to come on this podcast. They don't want to have real conversations because they lie to the public. And we're going to say, hey, Pinocchio, we know you're lying, and here's why. And they can't debunk it. All they could say is we're racist. That's it. Just pure deflection and pure smear campaign. Hey, if that's all you got, God bless you. That's not going to last very long.
So Matt O'Brien says, I just can't believe the unprofessional attire of Kaz Drone. He wears anything he wants representing the NYPD. So one thing I got to say about that is that I want to know how much money they're spending on embroidery. I really do. I want to know, because I never see them in the same attire twice. They have all these shirts. Sometimes the words are misspelled. Their titles are changed. One day he's commissioner. Next day he's assistant commissioner. Next day he's deputy commissioner. I never seen any of the shirts twice. They're always crisp white. John Shell wears the traditional uniform, but even that, he looks horrible in it. He should probably wear a suit, cover up, that he hasn't been taking care of himself. It's not a good representation of the police department if you're wearing the uniform and it looks sloppy, right? We don't like to see cops like that. And coming from an administration that's sitting there and telling, we want all our cops to look sharp, then you should look sharp yourself. So, Kaz should look sharp himself. he should be in a suit and a tie, or at least a suit, maybe without the tie. But all of these white gold shirts, it's amazing for someone that never wore a sergeant's test never passed a sergeant's test to be wearing a white shirt with gold lettering. But I think bigger than any of that, because that's just my critique and my feeling on fashion. I'm not a fashionista, but bigger than that, I think the fact is, how much money are New York City taxpayers spending for their elaborate uniforms? I mean, we've seen Eric Adams play dress up basically every day. He's got a sanitation jacket. The sanitation goes on, they get a new one. He gets a new one. He gets a new hat. Everything says the mayor on it. I mean, how much money are we spending on embroidery for these people to go out and play dress up? I think that's the bigger question. But I think when you look at these drones, it's just pure gaslighting. It's just pure, let's change the conversation. I don't feel like lying to you so much and telling you that crime is down 3 years in a row when the numbers don't back that up. When our own numbers don't back that up. So let's talk about something else. And that's what you're seeing with this drone. He's deflecting. I did this. I did that. I instituted these drones. We see where it could work. We see where it doesn't. But they're painting this is the way of the future. I'm going to bring you back to the subway robot. I'm going to bring you back to the now decommissioned K5 transit subway robot, right? This is what Eric Adams says. Eventually, this is going to be part of the fabric of our subway system. This is below minimum wage, no bathroom breaks, no meal breaks. This is a good investment. New York City Mayor Eric Adams. And Kaz Daughtry sitting here singing you the same tale. And then when he gets pushed back on it, oh, you guys got to check this guy out. You guys got to check this. He's talking to the producer in the back. Make sure you don't got those guys from the Finest Unfiltered on. Nobody wants to go on Newsmax anymore. You guys just embarrass yourselves.
Oh, yeah. I can only imagine. John, I can only imagine what these two are telling Newsmax about us. I can imagine how they're bad. What's that?
They can say whatever they want.
I could care less. First of all, these two little scaredy cats, if they ever actually met us in person, they would never even have a conversation with us. I'd be willing to have a conversation, sit down. I'll even shake your hand. And you know what? I always say it, opposition meets opportunity. Let's have a real conversation but in person. But they wouldn't. They wouldn't, because they lie. They lie over again. And that's why I said on prior podcasts, and I continue to say this is the truth. John and I, we could be unfiltered, because the same conversations we have in a locker room, the same conversations we have with our friends and listeners on this podcast, are the same conversations that we actually put publicly on social media. These conversations are all the same. So if there is ever a hidden camera, John and I would not have to worry. It would be the same conversation. But Kaz Daughtry and John Shelley, you have to worry. Behind closed doors, you're like, look at these suckers from the Shaman Society, right? They want to be like the Hispanic Society and get promoted. You guys are saying, oh man, they actually brought up bullshit about crimes. It's like, whew, that was an easy one. But we don't have to worry, because the same conversation we have at home, same conversation in the locker room, it's the same conversation we're having here. Can you answer that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Sherry, thank you so much. I appreciate it. She said 100, Eric. I appreciate she's always listening here and staying with us in the mornings. I really appreciate it. They're just outright lying. It's disgusting what's going on with this administration. How can the public trust you? Not only that, how can the rank and file trust you? The rank and file is being led by this leadership that only cares about their egos. They're going on a media tour. And yet we have built a bond between myself and John and the rank and file, active or retired. We're building a friendship here because we all believe that we want better for the cops that are out there right now. That's why we're here. That's why we're having these conversations. And yet they don't want to come on this podcast and deflect and call us racist because they don't want to call us the truth. I mean, hey, we're all family, right? Isn't that what they say? Isn't family forever? I guess you're only family while you're on the job. I guess, John, you and I are no longer family. We're retired. We're not family anymore. So to my retired listeners right here, our friends, you're retired. You're not family anymore. They cut you off. Only the people that are actually active who have an ID card. But even then, you're not family because they only care about you in death. And they don't want to have real conversations. They don't want to come on this podcast and have a real conversation. They'd rather show their loyalty to Newsmax, who's gonna button up to them, bootlick for them, but they don't want to come on this podcast. But you know what? Honestly, at this point, John, I don't even want them anymore. I don't want to give them any more clout because they couldn't even hold a room with us anyway. So if they wanted to come on this podcast, it would have to be on our terms anyway. when we're available and when we choose to.
Well, I mean, I like I said, I don't like being lied to. You know, I have no problem with anyone with a different opinion or anyone that's in direct opposition of anything that I say. But I just want it to be sincere and from the heart. And like when it's not, you know, if you're just in opposition because you need to lie for your boss or you're holding the water for someone, I mean, that conversations are going to be a terrible conversation anyway, right? Because it's not really going to go anywhere. So I don't blame them for not coming on. And I agree with you. Like at this point, I mean, what is that conversation going to be? You're a liar. Well, crime's up 32%. What are they going to say? They're not going to come on and have that conversation.
Absolutely
they're not going to come on and have that conversation. And I don't blame them. So listen, the smear campaigns could go up. Keep sending the messages. Have your mobster buddies. Have the Shamram call me. Let them know you're sending me a message. He's sending me a message, Mo. Yeah, I don't give a shit. Send whatever message you want. Send whatever you want. I'll be in the end of the month. I'll be up there. So if you guys want to come see me then. Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, what did we go through? We went through that, completely lied to you on Newsmax that crime is down. Completely, utterly lied to you that Newsmax is down. Completely showed you how vehicle pursuits are an absolute failed disaster and nobody with any brains in their head and law enforcement should partake in vehicle pursuits. Nobody. Anyone, and it matters. Democratic cities, Democratic mayors, it matters. It matters big. So it's another thing that John Schell said. That's a complete lie. It matters because that's where these cops are going to jail. That's where they're facing up to 18 years in jail, right? Facing 18 years in jail for a vehicle pursuit because you were trying to stop people who were getting robbed from mopeds, right? Getting 18 years in jail. And this guy had zero, like if they would have caught him that day and the tragedy didn't happen, he didn't lose his life, what would have happened to him? Nothing. He'd be out robbing people the next night. So you're out there risking your life. So we completely debunked that. Then we go on to the AI technology. It sucks. And so what do we have left? You have to sit there and call this podcast and people like us racist because that's all you got. You have to have your legal team saying that we're racist. And by the way, that kid got promoted. You have to come on there and have the Shamrim who leaked the video out to Sal Greco, by the way. You have to have them out here sitting here calling us racist. You have to say that because you have no other argument. When the battle is lost, when the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the losers. And the debate has been lost. The debate has been lost in New York City for the last 3 years. Anybody that's paying attention sees that New York City is not better off than it was 3 years ago. The NYPD is not better off than it was 3 years ago. Anybody with eyes can see that.
That was the message to the khaki pants when we were trying to advise them that the vehicle pursuits are not a tactic you want to be involved in. I mean, look at this case right here. Sutton, the police officer from D.C. Metro, is facing 18 years, and his boss Zabowski is facing sentence as well for trying to help him. I guess trying to figure out the paperwork and not say it's a chase or whatever the case is. Who knows how fast they were going? Like you said, maybe the speed limit's 15 miles an hour. It's not actually a chase. We're following him, crossing hairs. So seeing that, you think John Schell, even though he advocates for vehicle pursuits, you think he's going to stand up for you? Do you think he's going to be Zabowski and stand up for you and face persecution and prosecution himself? Absolutely not. Wake up. Again, I say it all the time. You're a permanent resident. I think this is when I blacked out. But when you're a permanent resident, just as the khaki pants, you have 20, 25 years to go in your career. John Schell and Kaz Daughtry are part-timers. They're guests. They're not going to be here forever. So right now, they're here. You got that blanket of protection. But one day when they leave, these investigations will still be hanging over your head. And we may have different district attorneys. Things change very vastly in New York City, especially in this country. And things may change around. You may be facing an investigation for something that happened 3 years ago. And if you don't think so, look at my case. As the most complained cop with the COVID extension, these civilian complaints were weaponized and substantiated because of the inception of the disciplinary matrix, and the CCRB utilized the COVID extension to exceed the statute of limitations to address my career, deteriorate my career because of the public record. That could happen to you also. I was faced with 8 sets of administrative charges that stemmed from 2018 while it was 2022 that far exceed the statute of limitations. And this could clearly happen to you. And that's why we were trying to warn you. But at this point, I washed my hands. You're on your own. You don't want to take our advice. You know better. Godspeed. I wish you well. And like you said, you know what? I honestly, I'm not afraid of anybody. I'm not saying I'm a tough guy, but I'm not afraid of anybody because I believe that you have to stand up for what you believe in. And I believe in the truth. And that's why we have our friends and listeners on the podcast have these conversations, because we all believe in the truth. If they want to paint us as some type of racist and call us that, I don't care. You don't care, John, because we know it's not the truth. And our friends know that also. That's why we have this bond here. That's why we're all listening together. We're talking at 8 o'clock in the morning, because we're not racist, because we actually care. So who's actually the one that shows bias and discrimination? It's them, not us.
Yeah. So Thomas Rossi says, Matt O'Brien, I mentioned a few of the NYPD YouTube videos on Kaz's appearance. He was dressing like he belonged on the street. Jeans, knit hat, raid jacket at a press conference briefings. Horrible. So, Tom, that's another thing. It's another point. One of the memes that we put out was Kaz Daughtry with his hat sideways. He was with a polo shirt with the shirt untucked, and it was long, so it looked like a mess untucked. And he had these like sagging baggy pants tucked into Timberlands out with his shoe with the boots untied. So, and we put a Lloyd Banks song with it, who's a rapper. So that meme was based off an actual picture of Kaz Daughtry where he was scolding a young cop in uniform because I forget what the cop didn't have on his belt. I don't know, maybe a whistle, whatever. Some stupid shit, whatever the cop didn't have. So he was scolding the officer's uniform appearance while he's standing there with an untucked polo shirt that's long. So it's not even one that you should wear untucked. It was a polo shirt meant to be tucked, that one. So it was long. It looked like a mess. He had Timberlands on. They were open. And fraying at the bottom like this. They were unlaced. And he had his hat sideways while he's scolding the cop about uniform appearance. So we put that tweet out. And the NYPD's like Deputy Commissioner of Legal Matters. He's like the director now or some shit. He had said, oh, you guys are racist. You're racist. Your memes are racist. We had this other loser lieutenant in the CRT telling us that we're racist because we put the meme out. I'm like, oh, it's racist? I was like, what's racist? This photo or the meme? Because we just made a meme based upon the photo, right? And that's all of our memes. So it's like, that's what they go to. If you ever mention anything about anything that happens, right? If you say that Eric Adams is incompetent, which I've said 1,000 times, I'll wear that shirt tomorrow for the Eric Adams incompetent shirt. That's become my new favorite T-shirt. Then he says, oh, people call me incompetent because I'm black and they're racist. That's a deflection. That's always the deflection. We were racist because we called John Shell Chief Token Paleface. We called Michael Kemper Chief Token Paleface. We put after Eric Adams, this is the chocolate administration, we put a picture of Eric Adams' administration and everyone's face on like ice cream chocolate containers, except John Shell was on the vanilla bean, right? The vanilla bean ice cream. So they brought that up. They put in pictures that we never even put out. I don't even know what the hell they were talking about. We dressed, it looked like Mike Kemper as a used car salesman because he was on the new TV lying about, I forget, whatever they were lying about. And Kaz Daughtry was on TV lying about whatever they were lying about. And we dressed him up as 1970 used car salesman. So Kaz Daughtry had the afro and Mike Kemper had the long hair. And they were both in these like polyester suits in the 70s. That's what they're labeling as racist. So they're absolute cowards. They think what they would back down on, they think that that's going to work. But they've tried it time and time again. And it's not going to work. But I agree with you. Very unprofessional. And if you call them out on it, that's the card they pull. Oh, you're a racist. You're a racist.
You know what the funny thing is, right? They call Thomas, you're right, by the way. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. What's funny is they calling us racist, but John and I say it all the time. These memes make themselves. Pretty much, we put the meme out there, but they make themselves. Honestly, Kaz Daughtry, you were dressed that way. You made that meme. We just put it out there. You guys are lying to the public. You look silly. And guess what? I'm going to say it again. You're going to say I'm a racist? I don't care. You are. You're a chief token pale faces. Your own DI movement in the police department by Tanya Meisenholder, which we did a watch party on a prior podcast. If anybody missed it, please watch. We did a watch party with Tanya Meisenholder, former deputy commissioner of the New York City Police Department, pushing the DI movement. She said herself that some people in the police department are just too old male, old and pale, and old and stale. And she said it herself. So you know what? maybe you need to take it up with your own hierarchy of the police department when you talk about racism. Not towards this podcast, but hey, you can call us what you want if that's what makes you feel better. And if you think that's gonna, we're gonna get nervous. Oh my God, you called us racist, because that's what this is. To try to suppress this podcast, because most people, they get timid and they get scared when they're called racist. You know what? We got body armor. You know what our body armor is? The truth. We're not afraid because we're speaking the truth. Call us racist, call us what you want. But if you call us racist, show us how we're racist. If you want to show me a meme, I'll show you the picture of Kaz Daughtry. Kaz Daughtry did it himself. He was out there instructing a police officer while he had his hat backwards, his shirt hanging out. He was disheveled himself. We talk about that is supposed to exemplify leadership, setting the example. He didn't set the example. So if you find that racist, maybe the problem is with you, because you see that as a black and white thing. We don't. We see it as a problem of leadership. But you see that as a black person wearing their hat sideways. So maybe you're the one that's racist, and maybe you're the one that has prejudice ideology in your head, not this podcast, and not our friends listening here either.
So Donna Cannon says, Eric, that reminds me when I was in the military and officers that couldn't pass the PT test, but they would flag or even discipline you for something they couldn't do themselves. And Dan Rumia says, reminds me of a certain admin lieutenant I had when I was a rookie. He came in a roll call with baggy jeans, untucked long shirt, big ass gold chain, hat turned sideways, and a big Thug Life tattoo on his neck. Wonder who you could be talking about. Is that then turned into former retired Inspector Corey Pegues? I think you are, sir. That's exactly who you're talking about. Corey Pegues, Thug Life.
And friend to Eric Adams.
Friend to Eric Adams. I'm shocked he's not in the administration, but I think it wasn't after he, it's funny. They went after him and they actually pulled his gun license for him saying that he was rolling around with the Supreme Team. Said he was rolling around with the Supreme Team. He wrote a book like Gangsta Cop or some shit. And he said he was dealing drugs with the Supreme Team and all this other shit. And he was hanging out with Kenneth Supreme McGriff. And they actually went up to prison and they interviewed Kenneth Supreme McGriff. And they were like, yeah, this guy Corey Pegues, he said he used to run drugs with you, became a police inspector. And McGriff is like, I don't know who the hell that dude is. So he completely lied, right? But so anyway, they go after Corey Pegues. They I think Suffolk or Nassau, wherever he lives, they pulled his pistol permit. But Eric Adams is actually on the Supreme Team. He's on the Supreme Team documentary after that happened. No one's saying anything to him. And he actually openly says that he was running numbers and he was doing other things with the Supreme Team. I don't believe him either, by the way, but I don't believe he did either. I think if you ask Kenneth Supreme McGriff, he might say he knows him now because he's the mayor and he needs some help doing something. But other than that, I don't think he was hanging out with them either. I think it was all bullshit. But nobody went after him for that. And do you think he disclosed that on his form when he was trying to become a New York City police officer? Because that's what they went after Corey Pegues on. They said, well, he never disclosed it. We should pull his pension. We should do this. They were really going after him hard for writing that book. And I didn't agree with any of it because at the end of the day, it didn't matter. It's 20 years service is 20 years of service. But nobody said a word. And this guy's the sitting mayor in New York City, and he's on a show about the Supreme Team saying how he ran with them.
Yeah. Didn't he also say that he was rolling joints? He could make, what do you say? He could make like 10 joints out of a dime bag or something? So, hey, maybe they should just pull your guns for that. You got to laugh at this administration because everything that comes out of them, everyone that's in this circle, it's the theme of this administration is to lie. Everything has to be a lie. And sometimes I don't even understand why they lie about certain things they lie about. They lie about the smallest things. I don't know how they keep up with all these lies anymore. And that's why I said there's 1,000 ways to tell a lie and only one way to tell the truth. And that's why we don't have to hide on this podcast, right? Because we tell the truth. That's all you have to do. Speak the truth. But the truth is a scary thing. I think somebody made a comment about it earlier. The truth is a scary thing. People don't want to face the truth. And they don't want to face the truth because of the hard reality. And if Eric Adams actually says the truth, you know what? He may not face re-election. That's his problem. I mean, he's got other problems right now under his subpoena that may hold him back from potential re-election. But if he was to tell the truth, then you know what? The data does not reflect how they call it the safest big city. I don't know how they call it the safest big city. Crime is up it looks just completely like a third world country. It's unrecognizable. Sometimes when you see these videos, if you didn't see street signs or no one told you where it was from, and you didn't see NYPD patches, you will look at these videos and say, where is this? This is New York City? This is America? This looks like a disaster. This doesn't resemble America at all. Landed free. This looks crazy. It looks like a third world. Oh, let's shift gears right here.
Well, this actually isn't shifting gears. This is staying on topic. This is probably going to get us demonetized, but whatever. Who cares? It won't be the first time. So this is the 7 Crowns.
Add it to the list.
This is the 7 Crowns. This was the precursor gang to the Supreme Team. Here is the current mayor of New York City speaking about it.
It used to be this number 7 with a crown on top of it, and it was just extremely impressive. And just being associated with the 7 Crowns just gave me a sense of ownership and belonging. It used to be this number 7 with a crown on top of it, and it was just extremely impressive. And just being associated with the.
I mean, it's not like, what is that? Look at it. Mayor of New York City, former member of the 7 Crowns.
I can't believe how he's idolizing this. I mean, what do we expect from young kids right now in New York City that potentially are in a gang or joining a gang? Your mayor, the one that's leading this city, is idolizing the 7 Crowns, idolizing a gang himself. What do we expect from our kids right now? He talks about educating our children, and this is where it's coming from, someone that idolizes a gang. This is absolutely ridiculous. I question if he was actually part of it or not, but even if just the fact that you're idolizing it, what message are you sending to the kids out here? How are you some type of mentor to children out here? This is coming from a mayor. It's honestly, the memes make themselves. You can make a meme out of this right now. I'm sure we will.
It's absolutely disgusting. You're detracting from this by bragging about, look, he's glorifying, so happy. That's like me sitting there glorifying. I used to hang out with Henry Hill. Those guys were a bunch of dirtbag skells. They were a bunch of dirtbag skells, and you're going to sit there, yeah, he hung out with Henry Hill, and I hung out with Jimmy the Gent and all these guys. Dirtbag skells, nothing to glorify. It's absolutely, it's honestly, it's disgraceful. And this is the sitting mayor of New York City. Sorry to go off topic there. Let's do one more thing before we get out of here. But the Corey Pegues thing brought me up. I actually invited him on the podcast. He never responded. I wanted him to talk about how when he went on CNN, he was talking about the Garner situation, and he just was making things up, saying they didn't follow EDP procedure and all that stuff. And I wanted him to come on and talk about that specifically, what he was talking about in CNN, and he never responded. I don't blame him. I probably wouldn't either if I went up on TV for no reason. So here we go. Was this a Freudian slip, or was this just a gaffe? Eric Adams at the DNC, he wasn't allowed on stage. They didn't give him a speaking spot, which is a real snub for a New York City mayor. We're supposed to be the international city, the biggest city in America, the financial capital of America, all these things, and yet Eric Adams doesn't get invited to speak. I think because there's a lot of smoke coming around the Adams administration. But he takes part in some panel, and he suffers an embarrassing gaffe where he says, when he's talking about women in his administration, he says, he said, when attempting to characteristically swagger-filled response to a reporter's question about the federal corruption probe swirling around him, Eric Adams appeared to accidentally slip into X-rated territory. One of the gifts that I have that made me really being good at mayor is my ability to sexualize and stay focused. What do you think about that? Freudian slip, or what was it?
I think sometimes, like I said, there's 1,000 ways to tell a lie, and sometimes you slip and you just tell the truth. The real Eric came out, and that's why they have all these sexual allegations towards these deviants. Mayor Eric Adams, all his friends that are in his circle, they have all these issues. He's the last person that should be saying that right now. We need to exemplify and I think we'll play the clip tomorrow if we have an opportunity. But there's a chief right now in Chicago who spoke out about the vulgar language that was coming out at the DNC towards his female police officers. If you have an opportunity to see that video, I think we'll play it tomorrow as we'll talk further about that. But he stands up for his female police officers, and he's disgusted by the vulgar language and the people sexualizing his female police officers. And he said how proud he was of his female police officers, how stoic they were, and how they showed professionalism and bared through the vulgar language. But he stood up for them. That's what we need. Mayor Eric Adams is actually telling you who he is. He's a man that likes to abuse his power, and he just showed it just now.
Yeah, I mean, listen, does he obviously has a problem keeping women in his administration, right? We had one female police commissioner leave. We don't know why she left, but she left. We had recently had an FDNY commissioner leave. We don't know why she left. I think he kind of slipped at a press conference and gave it up, but I won't get into that. But he, she left too, and I'm sure there's a lot of other women in Eric's cabinet that you're going to see leaving in the next few months, the next few short months. And then let's not forget when Eric and Jeff Masry and then Caban, when they went to the Masons, the Freemasons, they all got all inducted as a grand high priest of the Freemason. That was a weird day too. But yeah, I think that I don't know if this was a gaffe. I really don't. Because I always love to know what really is being said behind the scenes, because like with that whole Chris Ball incident where he said, "Oh, cops being a good job, but you might get shot, and screw these guys that don't want to take the shot and all this other stuff. We'll fire them. We don't feel bad for them." That's basically what Eric Adams was saying. And I kept saying, that's the talk in City Hall. That's what Eric Adams saying. That's what he's saying about it. But then Chris Ball went on further to state that he doesn't think that Eric Adams has the tools to navigate this migrant crisis. And he was 100% on right. He got fired for telling the truth. He was 100% right about it. He obviously doesn't have the tools to handle it. And he said that he was worried for New York City and he's not going to be able to navigate it. So he fired Chris Ball. But when he fired Chris Ball, he said it was nothing to do with the criticism of me. It had to do with that he criticized the first responders, who Eric Adams fired. He fired Chris Ball for making fun of Marlon Bethel, who got fired. But till today, Marlon Bethel's not back at work. And there's thousands of other people like Marlon Bethel, EMTs, cops, teachers, firefighters. They're out there. They're not back to work. Eric Adams is fighting hard to keep them out of work. But he said that he fired Chris Ball for that. So there's a lot of talk that this guy's having in backdoor rooms. He's having with John Shell. He's having with Kaz Daughtry. And every now and then, that talk's going to slip out.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Exactly what happened here. He hit tripwire. He hit tripwire because the real conversations that he's having behind closed doors came out. That's why I said that's the dichotomy, the comparison, the contrast between this podcast of us speaking, our friends, our listeners on this podcast right now. The stuff that we're saying on this podcast is the same stuff that we're saying at home with our families, same stuff we're saying in our locker room, same stuff we're saying at retirement. We talk to people in stores. We just talk to people. These are the conversations that we're having. It's the same conversation. And that's why it's so natural and so comfortable for us to actually do this podcast. Unlike Mayor Eric Adams and his constituents, just like John Shell and Kaz Daughtry, their conversations in private at home are far different than what goes on in public, and eventually they're going to slip out. And that's what happened here. He hit tripwire, and he slipped, and the real Eric Adams came out in a blip. There's only so much you can do to cover up your lies.
100%. So, listen, we're headed on 2 hours. We're talking about all this stuff. I think it is important to highlight that all of the insanity around law enforcement is largely happening in Democrat-controlled cities. Really have to restore the balance, not only in New York City, but in other blue states and in blue jurisdictions and blue cities in those red states. You have to restore the balance. I'm not saying that everything needs to be controlled totally by conservatives, but there has to be a balance. And there's no balance in New York currently. There's no balance in the Assembly and the Senate. The upcoming elections, the upcoming presidential election, all the way down ballot are very important. It's very important Americans rise up and get in the game and start voting, start becoming politically activated, know what's going on where you live. Know, we always say it's the local politics that affects you more than the presidential. Unfortunately, we're at a point where the power of balance is so far to the left that we're literally being run by a leftist Marxist, one party controlled, state Senate, state assembly, city council, and we're even seeing it in the federal government too. So we really need to restore that balance. We need to get common sense people that are in there that are not doing this for money, that are doing it because they believe. Tom Sullivan's one of those guys. He's in Assembly District 23 in Queens. If you're not in that district and you can't vote for him, reach out to your friends and family and tell them, make sure they put Tom Sullivan on the ballot. Tom Sullivan is the Republican, Conservative, and Common Sense Party candidate for New York State Assembly District 23. Tom is a financial professional who served simultaneously in the United States Army Reserve for 30 years and has now retired. His district covers Ozone Park, Lindenwold, Howard Beach, Broad Channel, and the Rockaway Peninsula.
Come November, I would empower our law enforcement agencies to go out there and do their job and not put them or their families or their pensions at risk for doing their jobs. We need drastic change in Albany so that we have a say in this matter, and they realize people of New York State will hold them accountable.
The Sullivan family has a legacy of service. Tom served for 30 years protecting and defending the rights of others. Come this November, he has earned your support. This advertisement's paid for by the Friends of Tom Sullivan.
I'll tell you, listen, I just want to say one thing before we get out of here, John. I hope the Shamrock Society actually gets their benefit. I'm sure at some point they're going to make Kaz Daughtry or John Shell Man of the Year, just like Hispanic Society did. They're all following suit. They're all competing with each other instead of doing organizations have lost their way. Shamrock Society, too bad for you.
Yeah, EC says, if you're giving PBA cards to family members, make sure they have your same views. I agree 100%. I have a lot of family that, they were anti-police. They were posting the black squares during George Floyd. I cut them off. I was like, ain't getting that. I don't know, a couple other my family members that, were on a different side of the view when it came to what laws we should follow. And I didn't give them cards either. I was like, dude, you're not bringing me down. Your decisions in life are your decisions. I'm going a different path. You're not going to use my name to try to get yourself out of anything. So if you're going to be, and people that are assholes to cops, I'm not going to give you a PBA card. So I agree. Dan says, why is the Shamrim Society after you guys? It's not the Shamrim Society. It's the Brooklyn South Shamrim.
That's right.
They're stepping in front of Kaz Daughtry because they themselves leaked a video to Sal Greco that we shared and laughed about. So they're going back through all of us, scrubbing our social media, trying to paint us as racist. But whatever, I could care. We could have that conversation. We actually invited them to come on here too, and they didn't. So I mean, obviously tells you what it is, right? It's all just slander. Hard to actually hone in on the points and talk about things. It's easy to just say stuff. So appreciate you guys coming on. Eric, anything else before we end?
Yeah, listen, I can't thank enough. Some people donate to the podcast. I appreciate it. It's very nice of you. The comments that we got from our friends and listeners from the podcast is great. The engagement that we got going here. Let's keep building together. Let's keep telling the truth. And, we appreciate it. You guys help us make this podcast. We work together. Thank you so much for listening. The comments that we have here, really, people are actually listening, really engaged, and they're really important. And you bring up a lot of points that really help John and I keep this flow going. So thank you so much. We appreciate New York's Finest Unfiltered Podcast, 265 Police Live. We'll be back tomorrow, 8:05 live. Back again.
That's it. And Kaz, please. Release the whole video. We want to hear it. You're as warm as a glass of brandy.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime. But nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.